So hi, I thought I'd do a little blog about guilt today. In the Pesso Boyden system of body-based psychotherapy, we have a unique place for guilt. And in fact, this particular type of guilt that is often arising from something that we call holes in roles in Pesso Boyden. This type of guilt specifically, in my map of the world, in my experience, Pesso Boyden body-based psychotherapy is the only therapy that can really get to the bottom of this type of guilt. This type of guilt is related to limits and our ability or inability to limit ourselves or to fear our limits. So how does that relate to guilt, might you ask? Before I answer that, just think about these questions. Do you or anybody that you know have a tendency to take on too much? Or a tendency to feel guilty easily for little apparent reason? That it's a common theme in your life. Or perhaps you have a tendency to expect too much of yourself, to take too much on, and or a pattern of putting others before yourself. So you find it commonly that you are giving out, giving to others, putting them first, but you don't have a tendency or you don't find it easy to take help and support in. That actually taking help and support into you, receiving it from others, can actually be quite an uncomfortable thing for you. So uncomfortable, in fact, that it might stop you going to some wonderful personal development practice like psychotherapy. That you see it as a weakness, perhaps, or a sense of failure. And that brings me to another point with this pattern, that we can be seen by others or by ourselves as the strong one. The one who's the light in other people's lives, the one who's always there for other people, or the one who's always strong, who doesn't really need support. All of these tendencies are related to this pattern of guilt and limits. So you see, when we're children, when we're a child, when we're young, we need to feel that all of our forces, positive and negative, emotional forces, physical forces, can be held, contained, handled by a loving other. In fact, we need an embodied experience of that all of our brute force of our emotional strength, when we let it rage out, can be held and handled, met by a loving other who isn't hurt or scared or made angry because of it, but can handle it and us in a loving way. And similarly for our physical strength, our aggression, we need to have that embodied experience of all of us coming at somebody else, and that loving other being able to hold it, contain it, handle it, so that we don't hurt another emotionally or physically. But when that other, usually parents, because they're the formative figures of our early life, of course, when that other has their own weaknesses, I don't even like that word, but has their own issues that prevents them fully being themselves, perhaps. So perhaps they're a little bit sensitive or not so emotionally robust. We can then end up concerned about them, feeling responsible for making them feel hurt somehow. But when that happens when we're younger, it's too much of a responsibility. It's too early a responsibility for us to truly handle, you see. And it's not a problem until it becomes a problem. Nothing's a problem until it is a problem for us. But in our adult life, then that can become a problem because we end up spending too much of our time worrying about our impact on other people, Or when other people are suffering or struggling, we end up spending too much of our time feeling responsible for them. Or we might have this burden of guilt in our lives. And there are many other ways that this pattern expresses itself, but there's some of them. If we can begin to understand the origin of this guilt, holes in roles as we call it in Pesso Boyden, and do some healing of that to free us of that particular burden, so that we experience a sense of limits in therapy, loving limits, that we can put back into our past and meet those unmet needs, yes, that healing can happen. And we can go forwards in our adult life in a way that's freer for us. We have more energy, we have more spontaneity, more joy in life. And wouldn't that be great?